I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. It's a lovely day here in New York City, but Andrew Kuo has been robbed of his favorite activity, visiting food halls. Is that fair to say?
If you're listening to this and you're a Cookies Day one, no, this is not a repeat segment from every other pod we've ever done before. But there is news that another food hall is closing, the Jean-Georges Tin Building, which was kind of upscale, kind of served like the pier, the remodeled, reimagined pier full of ESPN offices and Nike offices. Is the South Street Seaport a failed experiment, or is the Tin Building cracking?
You know who always serves a pier? Me. That's who. Well, look, I am anti-food hall. They are structures that no one asked for, that no one wanted, a real estate scam, and they are all crumbling upon themselves like so many things in this city, in this country, in this empire in decline.
So you don't like New World Mall in Queens?
No, that one's kind of cool.
The good ones are good, right? Like Urban Hawker, I enjoy. I think DeKalb Market's kind of incredible. They both have Hainanese Jones in them, a chicken spot. I also think Chelsea Market. I know that's Google backed, but there's some delicious things to eat in there. It's awesome.
Except also, no, I actually don't like the mall. I like
New World Mall.
the food that's in the mall.
Isn't that the same thing?
I don't love the experience of going in there and sitting at communal tables and walking over. I like going in restaurants.
So you don't like night markets like in Asia and stuff?
I've never been to one. They might be great.
They're insane. They're so great. They're magical. Fair enough. It is I want to say it's a very American thing to have like a brick and mortar, like one restaurant thing. And to sell like boat noodles from an actual boat is not an American idea. Like if you go to California and you see somebody serving hot dogs, it's usually not a white person, or tacos on the street. I love it when there's like 4 taco stands back to back to back to back, and they all do different stuff. If you want to put them kind of semi-permanently under like a house structure, that sounds good to me.
I'm okay with that too, of course. I mean, those are like taco trucks, stands. This is true, but that to me is not the same thing as like the food hall as a New York City experiment, which is very much a resurrection of not a Asian night market or a taco truck stand, but of the mall food hall.
Well, Urban Hawker is kind of they tried. It's one of my favorites, but it's not working because it's way too weird, I think. Now all the stands, like every other stand now offers a hamburger and stuff. But like the idea that like it is a real estate grab is interesting, because I think everything is kind of a real estate grab. If you have a bunch of clubs and bars that are awesome, give it 10 years and it won't be there, and they're going to be condos, whatever people call that. But it is kind of the way things go. Coffee shops too. Here's half the rent. You can have a coffee shop in an up and coming neighborhood, and when your lease is done, we'll be taking it back. And the food hall is kind of the last kind of element in this process. It's like, oh, we're just gonna put a food hall in here, see if it works, like Essex Market. That's not a real estate grab. The grab happened a decade ago, and the Essex Market, like the underneath the Essex Market, was kind of the last expression of the money going into that neighborhood, and it didn't work. The landlord shut it down. The old Essex Market is still upstairs. I love these places, man. I've been going to the old Essex Market for like 20 years before they moved, and the adjustment was weird. Shopsins into that new place, but It's awesome. It's so awesome because I like the vendors too. I like Good World, Nordic Preserves. I like my guys at Formaggio. And when I talk to them, they're just like they got a deal from the city, like they don't pay a lot of money to be there, and it's subsidized with taxes. And they're like, yeah, if we didn't have this, I'd try something else. I wouldn't be in food.
Well, I mean, in theory, they work, right? I mean, if you go to Barcelona, they have
Mhm.
this incredible market. I forget what it's called, but
Portugal too. Timeout.
it's sprawling. The timeout one sucks in comparison to the one in Barcelona. I'm just saying,
Yo,
like the timeout
Barcelona
one is
is
fine.
dope. Yeah.
That's the one, right?
Mhm.
You wander around and it's like there's a fishmonger and they've got these glistening, you know, aquatic beasts lying out on ice for you, and then you go
Why
over
you
here
glazing on
and
beasts?
it's
Glazing over beasts. No, for sure.
the beast glazer.
Yeah, yeah.
And then over here, it's like okay, it's like a tapas place, and you're drinking a beer and eating, egg dishes and chorizo and whatever. It's like there's everything
Mhm.
in one place, and that's like, I mean, that might be the best in the world if we're going to use like a westernized standard of the indoor market in that way. Like it's sprawling, it's enormous, it's insane. I feel like the problem for me is that they feel like they're a offshoot of Smorgasburg in New York
Which was
when they're in these
awesome,
new
right?
developments.
Like we make fun of hipsters in Williamsburg, but Smorgasburg was like good.
Bad experience.
Oh, too many people, right? It was kind of overrun at some point, but like,
Also overpriced, annoying.
but kind of delicious. You can catch something pretty good. I mean, no one. It's famous for like ramen burgers, which were kind of gummy and weird and not my favorite. But there were some delicious things. Like I think did Luke's Lobster start at Smorgasburg? I forget.
It might have. I remember they had Porchetta, which I think was before they had a
God, that place was
little
amazing.
brick and mortar
Yeah,
spot over in the East Village. That was a good one.
incredible. And that which is now Whole Foods, which is one of my favorite restaurants. Um,
Mm.
Taiwanese noodle.
I didn't know what happened to it. I was thinking about the other day. I'm like, he'd go for a Porchetta sandwich right now
It
if
was
only
so
that place
good.
existed.
They had one hunk of meat per day, and you walk in and they cut it down, and when it was done, it was done. Unbelievably delicious if you eat meat. But I don't think it's been there for more than 10 years.
No, it's been gone forever.
Yeah.
I was just like,
Yeah.
that was a nice little thing. The crunchy, almost like peanut brittle consistency of the cracklins.
Insane.
They'd sell it on a plate with some broth and some like broccoli rabe or a green.
Phenomenal.
It's probably also
Ciabatta.
$12. It was probably also $12.
Inflation is crazy. Yeah, it would be a $20 sandwich now. I mean, Rich Ho, who runs Whole Foods, Dick Ho, famously online, he serves homemade beef noodle soup that is just incredible. And you can vary the degrees of richness, no pun intended, and it is as good. But I think he charges like $20 a bowl, which is crazy considering what that dish is supposed to be. But I kind of want to veer back to the Tin Building because I went there a couple times. And I believe I texted you and Pablo during this era when Pablo was still at ESPN because it felt like it was going to fail immediately. It felt like a version of Italy that was French, where you walk in and it had very exotic but expensive produce, like a squash for $7, something like that. These beautiful flowers that cost $40, and then these sit down spots is like sushi, a French restaurant, an Italian restaurant, and dishes were like 40 to $50. There was no boom boom. There was like an ice cream stand that was like gelato. It was for a corporate client that I believe, imagined like, oh, Disney is here, so we're gonna serve suits. And I'm like, I remember walking in and being like, this is not gonna last. And apparently, it loses a few $100,000 per day.
Do you like Italy? I kind of do, but I think I also use it as like one store, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
It's a
And
scam.
I
Yeah.
don't really, and I don't really eat in there. I'm like, but they have good stuff.
Oh my
It's like,
gosh.
okay, I'll pick up some bread and some prosciutto and some mortadelle,
Yep.
maybe some wine, but I don't usually hang out there and eat.
It's a scam. Things are like double the cost just because they brought it over. But I went to Bologna.
I just want to support Mario Batali and
You mean Bastianich,
his
right?
endeavors.
Yeah. Um, I went to Bologna for like a week and was herded around by uh, somebody who lived there. So I think I got the true food experience in Bologna for however short amount of time I was there. Like back alley restaurants, restaurants that were in people's kitchens. Like it was kind of amazing. And then just as an experiment, I was like, I'm gonna go to fucking Italy and see if it's the same. And I ordered the pasta, I got the pizzas, got the mortadelle, I got the prosciutto. It was better than Bologna. And I didn't want that to be true, but I was like, it's tastier. Maybe I'm just happy to be home. But goddamn, there's no reason to fly over. I remember I landed in Bologna and they're like, well, you Americans may have had bologna before, but Bologna has a special product called mortadelle and has pistachios in it, and it's our delicacy.
Like,
It's paper thin. Yeah,
whoa, whoa,
and
are you
they
serious?
put it on a plate for me, and I was like, "This is the same roll that I get from Essex Market," and I'm like, "Oh shit, Bologna minus the ambiance and the experience on just like a points per game measurement." I would argue, like, if you're savvy and lucky enough, you can find it in New York City.
You're like, yeah, this is exactly what I get. Key food, how you say,
You say
Sea
the
Town.
Wegmans. Um, yeah.
Well, one quote that you said that maybe the only quote you've ever said that sticks with me. I could think, yeah. Now that I really put some thought to it, it's the only one. This is the one. So,
The
listeners,
world is my sink.
this is this is this is the one that the one jewel that you have imparted in 500 episodes.
Coaches don't matter.
Oh yeah, no. That's no.
Most
This is the one.
coaches don't matter. All right, go.
You
What is it?
said
What is it?
you said those little old Italian groceries on Graham Street. They're actually too authentic.
Yeah, I barely remember saying that, but I'll stand behind that shit. Deliciousness is complicated, right? And so when you walk into the tin building, it is
Oh man, that's a good quote too, guys. He's dropping jewels left and right. I'm just forgetting them. Deliciousness is complicated, like that one. Pff,
it is. Yo,
boom,
mark it up.
boom.
Mark it up.
Source magazine, hip hop quotable, right
Yeah.
there.
But you walk into, have you ever been to that restaurant Milos, that Greek restaurant that has like exotic fish flown in from the Mediterranean as you walk in on ice? And they're like, this came off of like a small plane 2 hours ago. One of those small fish will cost
Yes,
you $200,
yes.
right?
I've gone there for lunch several times. It's great.
It's great. And like one soft shell crab might run you $140. Like it is an experience where the money, it cannot be an object because it'll take your breath away. Um, and
That's why I go for lunch.
that's right. That's right. Get a little chowder. It's like Channel, Massachusetts. But the Tin Building had that vibe. I was like, there's too much opulence here for the wrong audience. Milos works because it's in locations to cater to that scene, Miami, Midtown, etc. The Tin Building in the South Street Seaport, I'm like, this used to be kind of a drug place because of the actual fish market. Obviously, the fish market was the Tin Building, famously. But growing up, it was a place where you can score drugs because it was kind of dimly lit and like those hours were shady and there's a lot of heroin and boats and people moving boxes and all that stuff. And then it kind of transformed into a place where there were live shows and apartments got renovated and there was a museum down there now and a little boardwalk. And now it's just like, okay, now it's Hudson Yards. the Tin Building, ESPN, uh, Nike. That last push is really hard to succeed at.
Is Corso Como still down there?
I don't think so. There's a music venue on top of that building too. That like
I remember that
Band
opened
bands.
and having to cover that for an event.
Lil Wayne
And like,
performed
okay,
there.
this is going to reinvent this neighborhood, an Italian concept store. It's going to be like everyone's going to be coming down here to buy their, like cool stickers and sneakers, and
Yeah.
it's going to be the new hotspot. I'm like,
It's hard to get to. Like you have to walk far for a train and there's no buses, right? It's like, and it doesn't really flow into a neighborhood. If you see Future on a top of a building, it's beautiful, right? Oh my God. New York City skyline, Brooklyn skyline, all that stuff. And then you take the escalators down and you're like, yo, let's get N beer. Let's get Shithouse and get N beer. You'd be hard pressed to go anywhere. The closest place would be Chat Square. And that was pre Chat Square a little bit.
I agree. Now we need to open a Colette in Chat Square, and that'll solve all these problems. The nexus of style and culture, all roads lead to Chat Square. So you mentioned opulence.
Yeah.
You mentioned opulence. You love opulence. You know who else loves opulence? The new masters of the universe, the MAGA movement.
You must be
Trump is president.
right.
And New York Magazine sent a writer down to cover the inauguration. And the writer, what was it? Brock from New York Mag. Went down there and went to a number of parties, ranging from the young and beautiful to the more traditional January 6th Capitol stormers and so forth.
What about some Asian nerds, some billionaires?
Didn't get into them quite as much. The main emphasis was on the young and attractive and the edgelords sort of who have young and cruel, I guess was how the headline described.
Is Morgan Wallen cool? Like,
I said cruel.
Oh, well, it's a play on cool, right?
Right. Yes.
The headline was the cruel table. But like, is this a vibe shift? We're always guessing. Are we living through a vibe shift or not? Maybe we're constantly living through a vibe shift. But these people have been around forever, right? Like they have been in plain sight my whole life. And it's a fascinating time because they're kind of taking their victory lap because they literally won the championship. But like, it reminds me of when Trump immediately declared that like John Voight, Mel Gibson, and Sylvester Stallone would be in charge of a committee to resuscitate Hollywood with the movies we want to see, like Rocky 7. What's the most famous John Voight movie? Not Mission Impossible, but the one with Burt Lancaster.
Oh. Are you talking about one of his westerns?
No, the one where the guy on the porch is playing the banjo.
Oh, Deliverance?
Deliverance. So we'll get Deliverance 5. Yeah. More Deliverances.
So yeah, this article that ran, New York Magazine, it's called, as you said, The Cruel Kids Table, The Cultural Ascendancy of the New Young Right. They took Washington, now they want the rest of America. The author, Brock Collier. So my first thought was there is some self-selection, right, in the editorial process here. The parties that the author decided to go to, the people they spoke with, and vice versa, who was willing to speak with them, the quotes they decided to use. So I'm just saying that as a caveat, But one thing that struck me was how little tangible politics were discussed by a lot of these people, right? It is not unfamiliar to me as someone who has been in New York for a long time and around downtown and seen some of these things crystallize. The infatuation and fixation on like a couple of words is really like that's like the what the movement is about.
They said
It's like
ethical basketball is in the piece.
that's what MAGA is about.
Kind
No, but it's like, can you say the R word? Can you say the F word? Can you say the N word?
Oh,
And this piece doesn't really get into the N word, but it's like the absolute fixation on saying those words, and it's discussed in this piece, not by the writer, but by the people who are being interviewed in this way, as if Trump took office and he's like, executive decree, we're freeing everyone who was incarcerated for calling people tards. Like, you're free to go. We're liberating everyone who said that. Oh, you dropped the F-bomb? Well, you're unshackled. I'm like, what changed? You were able to say all these things the other day. There was just such an overwhelming sense of pride and jubilation about language. And it just struck me as like this weird cultural war that totally mimics, political correctness from the 90s. Again, this may be self-selecting in the way that the story was written and composed and discussed, but that just really struck me. No one was like, I can't wait to privatize the national forests. And I think, no, it was just like, get to call people tards. Like, this is incredible. Like, we're back, baby.
in mid-December, I was walking down my street, and I saw my neighbor that I know well enough. We say hi every time we see each other. And I was like, Merry Christmas. And they stopped. And I was like, oh, have I said something out of place? Have I declared my political allegiance with these two words? Did I vote for Trump? Do I think people who aren't white should be deported, like myself? And then they were like, Merry Christmas to you. And I'm like, oh, MAGA wins. The vibe shift is happening. We're all into dropping hard R's and dropping the R bomb.
I mean, that's the new world we live in, man. But yeah, nothing about, look, I just want to make sure we, keep climate change rolling.
Yeah. I mean,
let's get rid of abortion nationwide. And again, these are obviously parts of the platform in there, and they may have their belief systems, but just so much was linguistic. It was about culture war issues that there's no difference. You're going to offend the same people if you use those words and that vernacular today that you would have yesterday. And a lot of their like glee was that it was a defeat of like wokeness and sort of like the cringe lameness of the Democratic Party's identity politics. I'm like, none of this is real, man.
I mean, the debate of language has been at the crux of things as recently as Black Lives Matters, Occupy Wall Street, Me Too, all these things, the way we say them. We saw the Commanders play football yesterday. A couple of people texted me being like, I wish they were the R bombs again. Morgan Whalen is still as popular as ever, dropping the hard R. And language has been at the forefront of political discussion forever, right? Like saying goddamn was a real scandalous thing turn of the century. Now you can just let the G bomb fly. And that's like, I believe that's an okay thing to discuss because on the surface, it's about freedom of speech, American stuff, the Constitution, and it signals certain policies. At my most skeptical, it is a misdirection, right? Because the more rich people have you looking at the ground and where we spit our gum at, and these words that do or don't mean things and make us fight like Asian or Oriental. I don't give a fuck, right? But the fewer people who look up at the penthouses benefits the people living in the penthouses. So, right, policy is important, but they want us to argue about bombs.
Of course, and
It's
for
real.
me,
Yeah.
we've discussed this in the wake of the last election as well. No pun intended with wake and woke, but I feel like the Democratic Party's intentional lean into identity politics as a alternative to the Republicans, and basically creating this juxtaposition of right-wing R-word sayers who are white and many
T-bomb.
like and very very like male in terms of sort of their conventional version of masculinity, versus the Democratic Party, which was far more coached in their language and more feminized and more the inclusive of people. But it wasn't really about any policies as much as like find your team and then just like rock with one of them.
Mhm.
And that was the vibe kind of from the people who are they're like, we won, our team is victorious. And I hang so much of this on Hillary Clinton, and I think Hillary Clinton is always to blame for.
I know you
no,
do.
no, I'm saying literally it is her. I mean, it is like
she's a
she was
long line.
it's her.
She's been in a long
Oh,
line
for
of
sure.
politics.
But of course, I just mean Hillary to me is the one who turned the Democratic Party into being an identity politics machine.
It would be her husband.
Obama actually,
You have to blame her husband for this, because she rose.
but he was doing
Clinton.
but he was doing right, but he was doing Republican style stuff when he ran for office. I mean, he was going against like Sister Soldier. He was going on Arsenio. Like he was playing those roles.
Yeah, but he was.
I just mean Hillary deciding. But I'm saying specifically, not Hillary's first time where she lost to Obama, but the time that she lost to Trump. To me, that was, and beat Bernie. That to me was the pivot where the Democratic Party was like, we are going to be the party of women. We are going to be the party of like language. And that kind of set things in motion, in my opinion, post Obama, in a way that led to sort of a little bit of what we're seeing now.
Does every conversation lead back to Bernie Sanders?
I mean, it should. He was the only. I mean, it's true. He's the only alternative we've had to like neoliberalism that made it to actually, potentially becoming the presidential nominee. I mean, in how many years?
He's been a senator for how 40, 50 years? He's voted along party lines mostly his whole career, right? Because if he doesn't, he's not going to get voted in. He's not going to keep his Senate seat. So, like, in my most Bernie-esque thought, I'm just like, the words MAGA, the M-bomb, the words woke or Democrat, the D-bomb, they're all misdirections too, in my most like kind of skeptical brain, because essentially the government just does what it does, and we can create fault lines in their differences in the way we can create fault lines in the differences between Kobe Bryant and Jerry Stackhouse. But in the end, they're just basketball players who score a lot of points. And as I get older, I'm just like, sure, these policies are fascinating. I'm following all these executive orders and everything. But like my 90s upbringing has told me to distrust that whole operation. So when New York Magazine has a story being like, the cruel table, are these people taking over culture? I'm like, it's been the same culture the whole time. It's just kind of infiltrated our brains because of technology and social media, where we think we're a part of it. but they're really doing stuff and then it's affecting us. There's been very, very, very wealthy people so far away from my concerns and needs that I think about even before technology. And what I learned was like, man, do they care about my happiness? Yes, ideally. But in the end,
But they don't.
Bernie Sanders might, you know.
Oh, Bernie might. I thought you were talking about.
And Andrew Yang did, and he gets torched all the time. But that's his whole thing. He's like, I want you to go to a fucking movie, you know. But and that's a visceral. The cost of eggs is real. Like that conversation is incredibly present. But I just think the survival of the next 4 years, the personal survival of the next 4 years, depends upon accepting that the powers of the government, by the time it get to you, are hard to differentiate between blue and red.
Yeah, I think that's true. To me, one thing that I've also pulled from that article was the appeal of the MAGA movement for young people who are opportunistic, who are ambitious, who want to be a part of this. It obviously intersects with like crypto scammers and AI people, and there's a very online element to it. But ultimately, it comes down to the fact that there's clout here, but there's also money, right? And whether that's Peter Thiel or Elon or the Koch brothers or whoever, there is a billionaire base where if you can become a successful right-wing grifter, as the wine moms like to call them, whatever, there is money to be made. You can go there and you can be successful and you can have a career. I mean, we saw that the Russians were paying like Tim Pool. They're paying him a phenomenal amount of money. And these are like, it's Tim Pool, the guy who used to work at Vice, like so much money. But also the Democratic Party does it too, right? It may not be in the same way.
Yeah.
But no. Bernie's different on this, though. You're talking about politicians. I'm talking about the young people who are drawn to it, right? And the Democratic Party does the same thing. It's just, we're going to form a consultant company. We're going to be, party media voices. We're going to be here singing Kamala Harris's praises as an influencer online. We're going to be we're going to form a company that's backed by the same kind of corporations that back the Republicans.
Think tanks.
I'm just saying the motivation for people going into careerism in the Democratic Party or people going into grifting on the right wing, it's all sort of the same stuff. It's just money.
Well, yeah, I mean, Zuckerberg.
Like your ideology, I just mean that's what I'm saying. The ideology is kind of second. It's just which is more closer to yours that enables you access to cash.
I mean, we talk about player empowerment. It's just like, why would you ever play for that team? I remember famously John Starks wouldn't put on a Bulls jersey. Now I think the culture is different. I think he would. I think loyalty, like Zuck, if it was Kamala Harris, he'd be like, well, I'm going to the White House to discuss like the future. And I agree. There's many opportunities in business when it comes to power. Michael Jordan. Republicans buy sneakers too. I don't know if he actually said that, but that's like the famous thought, right? And it's true. We're having a weird moment now this month, because the huge billionaire tech crew that has globbed on to Donald Trump is staggering a bit because China released DeepSeek, right? So all these budgets that were established when he became president and all these privatized monies that were coming in, 60 billion, 500 billion. Ooh, looks shakier now because the stock prices of a lot of these companies are tumbling because China has kind of rattled the cage.
I feel like there was a celebration early on, right? From people like, this is awesome because, yes, it's like fuck ChatGPT and these companies like.
Wait, celebration
these
when? The inauguration?
Right. I just mean when it was announced that China has dropped DeepSeek and another like artificial intelligence company that is going to rival them, and it's open source code because yeah, who likes these tech barons? They're not good.
I
Their vision for America is absolutely horrific. I mean, I don't need to delve into the Revenge of the Nerds topic, but I just mean no one likes Zuck and Elon and
this is an interesting take because
the DeepSeek
I
people.
didn't see that at all.
I'm sorry,
Uh,
really?
well, I don't follow
It
that.
was it was it was it was jubilation when China dropped, like
w-
100%. People were like, this is so amazing.
But
It's going to crush all the AI moguls, and that's a great thing. Like, who wants Sam Altman to have unlimited cash? It
people
was.
don't like that.
I'm saying this was initially what I saw online. It was 100% joy.
That might be the fault line between my feed and your feed because my feed was like, this is incredible. This technology is something that wasn't foreseen. This jump is extraordinary. We don't know how they got 50,000 NVIDIA chips, but like there's a caveat here. But also, this is extremely bad. So my feed was just like, China getting this much of a lead is terrible for everybody. And if you're MAGA or Democrat or whatever, this is not a good thing if you're an American because there's certain.
Yeah, I did not. I literally did not see a single person. So I don't know what your feed is.
I mean,
Maybe you're on MAGA Patriot feed. I don't know.
this is not
I did
good
not
for
see
MAGA,
anyone.
right? Like, people were like, "This is really bad," because in Trump's best,
Well, that's what I'm saying.
like it was bad for everybody. Like, no one was really talking about billionaires. Everyone was just like, this technology needs to be reined in, and we can't rein it in. Like, we need to find a way to figure out how they did it fast before we start arguing about like who's allowed to be in control of what. That's all out the window. That $500 billion Stargate feeding seed money is out the window. Like, we have to forget all the players in the game and figure out what game we're playing.
I mean, I think the overwhelming response that I saw was that this exposes what ChatGPT and Sam Altman and American tech overlords are doing as being a scam. That it's wildly overpriced. That the value is not commensurate with what it costs to create it or what its value is to society. That it's just in the same way of so much of you could say about American industry or the medical industry, that it's just speculatively driven, and that the way that China was able to make this, if verified, whatever, but for this cost with this amount of people over this period of time, absolutely shows how overinflated and gassed up the American like tech industry is. That to me was, I would say, that's the most accurate description of my revolutionary feed on this topic.
Yeah, I think if you're looking
It
to,
was less that like it's great that China's ahead of America. It was that it was bad for tech companies who are bad people.
if you're looking to own these certain baddies, like not baddies, but bad villains, like Peter Thiel, Altman, Zuck, whoever your dartboard is, yeah, you can pick one. This is bad for them. This is bad for the economy in general. The S&P 500 is not good for this. But there may be some criminality in the way China did this too. There may have been sales of high-speed chips that should not have happened. So
What does that mean?
there's
I don't. I
caveats. Like,
genuinely
I
don't
don't.
know.
There's trade deals where like them having this guy confusing this Asian guy Alexander Wang, not the Alexander Wang that we care about, but this AI expert was just like, they're not supposed to have these chips. These chips are supposed to all be accounted for. And the fact that they probably needed 50,000 of them to run what they're running, we don't know where that came from and who gave it to them. It's like, there's a finite number of things that can happen. And he's like, they have the horsepower and we don't know how they got it. So he's like, before we find out how they do it, we're not sure how powerful this this technology is, because if it could have come at a price that we don't know about, and that would be hard to sustain, which is interesting because it's all about these objects, these chips. So that was, I think, fascinating and to be continued on that. But he was very worried too, and he was on MSNBC and it went viral a little bit. He was like, not good for the world. It's like we have to make sure we are prepared for this, because this is like, in my mind, like Wemby stepping on the court, or like the Curry Warriors kind of gaming something that was brewing already. You know, player tracking, points per possession, statistics, advanced metrics, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, we're just going to enact this thing that is quote unquote light years ahead of what the next team is doing. And you can be like, oh, this is Jeannie Buss's fault. How did she let this happen? The corruption of the Lakers is in full display here. And I'm like, maybe they just did something extraordinary.
Why would this be bad for the world versus bad for the United States?
I think there's a domino effect. This is our discussion about TikTok and its privacy. I think it's twofold, right? There's immense money to be made on this technology. And China would benefit from that. And also there's a secondary thing. If whatever you believe surveillance might be, and we did a segment on this last week, it would be damaging, and it would be complex, subtle, and not so subtle, to let China have all this information about player tracking, about points per possession, about drafting for a team trying to rebuild. And I don't think, I think it would be a cool thing to say at a bar or put on my Tinder profile, being like, fuck the world, even Stevens, like America's evil. There's no reason a third world country shouldn't have the same opportunities as a first world country. Like, for sure, that sounds great. But that kind of political and financial instability probably doesn't lead to better lives in the present and future. Not to say that the world isn't suffering as a whole, but having China in charge of it, knowing their cultural and economic behaviors, is not ideal.
I mean, I fundamentally disagree with pretty much all of that. I think the idea that America as a global stabilizer is just a inaccurate reading of our role.
Who would it be then?
I don't think that. Well, I think we're
talking personnel.
Make things. Well, I'm saying no one is a global stabilizer. What we do is we bend the world to our own benefit.
China doesn't do that? Holy shit.
But we do it way more than anybody else. It's not even comparable.
We're more successful at it because China has other issues, right? And holy shit, you don't think given the opportunity, Japan would gladly do that on their terms?
Well, this is the thing, right? I think every country wants to be more powerful. That's in the nature of nation states. Survival. I think that's totally true. Would other countries behave like the United States? That I struggle to really grasp, because it's easy to say that we're all humans and all nation states and all these ideas that everyone would behave the same way if given the opportunity. And I think that's a way that we often excuse perhaps the things that America has done. But we don't know, right? I mean, we don't know. If we sit here and say
we have history to talk about it,
but America is a fairly uniquely cruel country. You know, not just the cruel kids, but we have been
more cruel than England. Their history is crazy.
More recently.
Oh, you mean
I agree with I know. I'm just saying.
Japan,
we want to draw a connection between
Yikes.
the countries, the squads that win big,
Are we
being
talking
extra
100 years or
cruel.
1,000 years? Because China in the last 100 years, cruelty is their game, right?
I mean, I mean, I don't know about China being more cruel than the United States. I
What?
mean, we're
That's crazy. That's just crazy. As a Chinese person, I'm like, that's crazy. China is developing their culture. And the Cultural Revolution with Mao did not happen in America. That's a fact.
yeah, but I'm saying their international policies versus America. I mean, America is like easily like the largest exporter of like violence and mayhem around the world, and has been since the end of World War II, because we were able to take that possession of that mantle.
And
You
why
know,
did
so
World War II happen?
what do you mean?
What was World War II about?
Like stopping the German takeover of the planet?
In Japan and Italy, right? There was instability, let's say, in that part of the world. And I'm not a World War II historian, right? But like having parents who were in Taiwan as that was going down, it was just part of the discussion in my house growing up. And like my father is a very open-minded person. He was just like, there are no real villains in the long story of world history, because that is always shifting. And for you to grow up and be mad at X, Y, and Z will prove to be your kind of emotional weakness. But if you look at the whole thing, it's like people do things for a reason, and they might be not the reason you think is correct. But like China was not a protagonist in that war. Neither was Japan. And America kind of stepped in a way that was perhaps necessary. And like policy kind of tumbles like dominoes afterwards. And it's been like half a century more since that all went down, 75 years. But like that's people were still alive then. So it's still recent. And like obviously, I don't drive a car for many reasons, but one of the reasons is like I don't like gasoline and the culture behind it. Like it makes me kind of bummed to think about filling my car full of this thing that is really valuable that we fight for. It just bums me out. But like one would say that's the electricity issue. That's Elon Musk. It's just as bad. And I'm like, perhaps it sounds nice to think that, but like it's hard to just say Kobe Bryant is the same as LeBron James.
I mean, personally, I understand why you have a fixation on China in the same way I have a fixation on the United States.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Gaza. I was like, yo.
Well, when I think about Gaza, that's because I care about the United States.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was born in Queens, right? So.
No, I know. I just mean you have more personal connections because of your family and your ancestry to China than I do. And I feel like you go back there a lot in the same way that I go, I am very American minded in terms of when I look at our culpability towards things around the world. If we,
I guess, right. But I guess my point is, yeah, fair enough. But like, I don't look like an American. So that is something that is a bias that I have. But it's fair to say, it feels good for me to say America is the most evil place on the planet. They do things that hurt other countries. It feels good to say that because it puts me in a moral place that I'm comfortable with. But then when I look at it closer, I'm just like, holy shit, there's a lot of stuff that goes on. And I'm like, this is not the worst case scenario. This might be the best case scenario, given the rules of the game.
I get it. I just view it as like the impact we've had around the planet, whether or not other countries would do the same given the opportunity, has been undeniably bad. Like there just isn't a way to reconcile what we've done. Is it as bad as the British Empire? Like if we're doing our tiers? No, the British Empire and the Spanish Empire, like
Not good.
they
Chinese
were
Empire.
they were as bad as it gets.
The
Like,
Mongols.
and,
It goes
you
on.
know, different time. You know, like there was no hand checking allowed. You know, in this modern era. Back then, you could
Mid-range
just hand check left
middies.
and right. You know, smallpox blankets. Like there's just a lot more defensive options or offensive options. Right, different era in that way. But the one thing that we do have that they don't have is we have football. We have the NFL, previously called the No Fun League by its haters. Sundays now belong to the NFL. Did not enjoy the lack of basketball games yesterday. I got to be honest, Andrew.
Sunday is a national. It was a national holiday yesterday. It felt like 2 championship games, 3:30, 6:30, I believe. Man, you walk down. It was a ghost town in Brooklyn. People were packed to the gills in bars. I shopped for my groceries with no one in there. The cashiers were glued to their phones. Where did you watch the games?
I just watched some of it at home because I wanted the Eagles Bills rivalry. The parts
your
of my
two
heart.
worlds, right.
The growing up as someone
Go
who,
back to where you came
followed
from.
the-
You mean upstate New York?
someone who followed the Eagles as a kid, even though I don't care about football now, I always have a tender spot for the Green Boys. And then
Randall Cunningham, my
upstate,
favorite
growing up
player.
there,
Michael Vick.
I did not really like the Bills growing up as an Eagles fan. They were annoying and they went to Super Bowls and kept losing. I had no particular affection for the Bills, but as an adult, because of like family members and people upstate, like, all right, I'd like to see a Buffalo Super Bowl or at least them make it. That'd be great. So I really did not care who won if they both made it. I would, that's a win-win as far as I'm concerned. So I was definitely hoping for the Bills Eagles Super Bowl, and it was close. Almost got it.
Yeah, I mean, did you watch in a bar?
I watched the fourth quarter of the Bills game at a bar in Brooklyn.
Yeah, and it's amazing.
Almost all Bills fans for the most part.
Yeah, it is New York, right? Like Buffalo is still in New York, but it feels far away because upstaters would claim their own culture versus Green Pointers.
I mean, it just is far away.
Yeah, literally, like it's farther than Pennsylvania.
It's like 3 times the distance of Philly.
Yeah, it is an incredible.
Yeah, it's about right.
The NFL is incredible because I don't want to mince my words here, but the game sucks, right? Like football itself is a bad game. It's very complex. It's hard to decipher nickel defenses, dime defenses, especially when you can't see safeties on the screen. And then you have like a tush push deciding the game as referees come from either side of the sidelines being like, I thought it was a first down. I didn't think it was a first down. Let's go to the replay. It's like insufficient evidence. I'm like, I get putting a microchip in the ball would kill the joy of the game, but like, this is some bullshit, right? Like, Josh Allen had that first down. And I feel like the NFL culture is so great because it's such a bad game that you're surrounded with beers, you're surrounded with wings, loaded nachos, mapo tofu martinis, General TSO chicken, all that stuff. So it's a joyous thing. Also, it's a chance for men not only to see violence, but to argue about rules, which is our favorite thing to do. I think that was ethical. I thought that was unethical. That was a catch. That wasn't a catch. Like, this is the experience of a broadcast. Like, what does Tony Romo think? The game itself sucks. Everything else surrounding it is male toxicity at its best.
Yeah, I watched most of yesterday not at a bar, and I cook some food, check my phone.
What'd you make
the
What'd you make?
ambient sense, but I made some mapo tofu.
Yes, dude.
You got me, Quo. You got me.
Let's go. So you had a great
Yeah.
day.
You had me dead to rights on that one. I was trying to avoid it.
Delicious.
Yeah, so listening to Tony Romo, like, he's really good.
I like him.
He's really good.
like him.
He is insightful. He's talking about, I really like that he wasn't sitting there just being like, he missed a free throw. We jinxed it. All right, some chicken. If he misses 2 free throws. I was like, no, he's talking about the sport.
He's excellent.
He's talking about it in a serious way. But he's also making predictions like, that doesn't seem good for the Bills. Oh, that one. I think they should probably, I could see them going left on this one. They've been doing that a lot. Like, he is really good at just talking about the game, being predictive, analytical. I really enjoyed that.
My favorite was, not to interject, my favorite is when he sees a end of the shot clock going down. He's like, he has to spike the ball now if he wants 2 plays. Okay, he missed that spike. He has 1 play left. And it's just like watching a quarterback think, or hearing a quarterback think in real time. And I think it's super fun, to your point.
I agree. I think I really enjoyed that part of it. Another thing that the NFL does well is early in the game, I feel like they used to cut away a lot more. They would go to commercial after some kicks, and now they do like the kind of roving camera as the guy comes over. They've added a little more dramatic way of watching the game because of the technology.
Yeah, and they switched. People were mad at that break as well. So the kickoffs are faster.
And I thought about that in the way that the NBA always gets criticized for end of games with timeouts, and like,
it's annoying.
They should make some adaptations.
I agree.
And
take away a timeout.
And especially now, not to jump the gun on basketball, but we're almost there. But just not to jump the gun on it. But I really dislike the trend towards both teams fouling. One team to delay the clock, and the other one to delay the opponent who's trailing from making threes, and just to keep it just going 2 for 2, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, with like a 5 or 6 point lead. They have to do something about that. They have to. It does actually suck. And I'm not someone who's like, that's why the ratings are down. That's because we don't have the New Orleans Pelicans anymore. That's why the ratings are down. But I'm watching it as a product. It's not good. The foul, just back and forth. Gotta add in something that's like, hey, that's an intentional foul. That's a take foul. They just have to.
Last 2 minutes.
Because but it makes sense that defenses are doing that because teams are better at shooting threes. And they're just trying to limit, that amount of, we're taking 2s and you're taking 3s. And we just have to, if we go even with you, we're likely to win. If we let you take the shots that are worth more, then you can catch us. I totally get it from a strategic fan standpoint, but comparing that to the early on in the football game, they make the drama nice. It's like, here's the kick. They follow the guy out. Okay, here's Mahomes heading out and then here's the first play. I as someone who is not an expert on like television production anyways, I did appreciate that.
Man, to your point a little bit, I was thinking about all that, and then all the cutaways to Taylor Swift and how controversial that is. Like, she's not even in the game. And I'm like, but this is good. I think an NFL executive was sitting there watching Travis Kelce at a Taylor Swift show being like, holy shit, is she single? Because he's there and he's shooting his shot. Like, if they can kind of combine forces, like, we are in good shape. It's like, he's already there. Talk to her team. Would she be interested in meeting him? Can we make this happen? Because on paper, the two of them together, Taylor Swift and her fan base, bringing eyes to the NFL, and then vice versa, dudes getting into Taylor Swift and the Eras Tour. Like, it's a win-win here. And I'm not talking about conspiracy, but I'm like, this is extremely compelling and valuable, where you have casuals who like to follow the Oscars and the Emmys and the VMAs being like, there's someone I actually like watching the game dating one of the stars in the game. Like this is in, and she's bringing famous people. There's Caitlin Clark from the WNBA. There's all these interesting people surrounding them. And this is controversial and good for business, depending on your politics and your stamina for bullshit. But like, the NBA has a court side. Let's go. Can we pair one of these stars with somebody who has like cultural gravity? I know Carl Anthony Towns is dating a very famous person, but like not Taylor Swift famous. Can we get like Rihanna was close. She was courtside a lot before she ends up making a family.
But she also wasn't dating anyone.
That's what I mean. Some executive needs to be like, would she like to meet Kyle Kuzma? Would she like to meet
She was being thirsted after,
I mean,
by
everybody?
everyone, but also whatever, J.R. Smith or Carmelo or whoever. But
Right.
as far as I can recall, she was never romantically linked, at least in any public sense, to an NBA player. I'm trying to think of more prominent ones. You had Kendall Jenner with Blake Griffin and Ben Simmons.
Not the right
and
gravity though,
Devin
because Kendall is already for
Devin
men.
Booker.
Taylor's for, I mean, I hate to sound sexist, but I am probably. Taylor's population of her fan base is like women and young girls, right? Mostly. I think she's
Yep.
one of the GOATs. I love her music, whatever. But like Kendall Jenner, like a model, yeah, that's kind of for men already. We need to introduce somebody that is like truly culturally new.
Right. I'm trying to think, like Beyonce, no.
That's close, but famously with Jay-Z forever, so off the table kind of.
Right. I'm trying to think of like the absolute biggest stars. Like who's out there? Who are we missing?
I know, I know. This is the problem, and this exposes how, like, I don't know, sexist everything is. But like, Phoebe Bridgers would not move the needle at all. I'm trying to think of.
What about Lana Del Rey in a relationship
That's kind of tight.
with
Vinny Del Negro, if he was still coach.
Josh Hart?
I mean, sick, right? Like, I know Josh Hart is a family man, happily married, but
Yeah. I'm not
No.
implying any infidelity. I mean, Lana Del Rey is married to the alligator guy.
Yep,
I'm just saying.
he's a real
All right,
dude.
Zion Williamson, Lana Del Rey.
Something like that, right? I like the Lana Del Rey thing. Like an actor, I just watched like that new Emma Stone movie, Kinds of Kindness, I think it's called. Someone like her, someone like Zendaya might have been a good one, but she's newly engaged.
Nicole Kidman and Thibs.
Thibs famously single. Nicole Kidman not famously single. But yeah, in theory, something like that for sure, right? Like if Nicole Kidman started dating, who's the oldest NBA player? Jeff Green. Let's go.
Nicola Kidman.
But
But so I'm trying to think of other prominent ones. I mean, obviously Kim Kardashian
yeah,
and that whole brood. They've dated a ton of NBA players, whether
Sure.
it was Lamar Odom or Chris Humphries or whoever, maybe Blake as well, whatever.
and it's unfair for me to
I
say
forget.
Keeping Up with the Kardashians is for men because it's for everybody. But like when Kendall Jenner shows up courtside, that's the male gaze, right?
I would say Keeping Up with the Kardashians is definitely for women, but I think you're also correct in what you're saying.
Right. Yeah. I think the genius of Taylor Swift is she is more powerful than all culturally, artistically more powerful at her craft than any of these people on the field. Like that's just incredible.
So you're saying we need to break up
Mhm.
Taylor
I am.
Swift
I am saying this.
and Travis Kelce.
And then bring back Robert Swift from out of jail or Stromile Swift from retirement. Get them in a Knicks uniform. There you go.
Stromel Swift,
Strotech.
who many people have compared to being the Bill Russell with hops.
Yeah, exactly. Tastro. I love it.
Yeah, watching the NFL being played in virtually every bar in Williamsburg and Greenpoint as I was
Wait, Robert Swift
strolling
killed
around the
himself, right?
neighborhood.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
He's not in jail.
no.
He's in jail.
He might
Is he
he
alive?
might be in jail or he might be out. He's alive.
Robert Swift is alive.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you sure?
He's clean. He got clean and then he was playing overseas
Oh, good.
more recently. It ended up being, from the last I heard, a more of a happy ending than the one where he was arrested and had a bunch of guns and drugs.
No.
I think he cleaned up.
It'd be a lot
and went
happier if he was
overseas.
dating Taylor Swift. But anyway, sorry to interrupt. I didn't want to.
That would be the happiest of Swift boats.
Yeah, Swift culture.
But yeah, I walking around and thinking about the complaints about the NBA's ratings seemed really ludicrous when you see the popularity of the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never been someone who cares about the NBA's ratings. It doesn't matter to me.
It's funny.
whether
I love
popular
thinking about it.
or not.
Yeah.
I like thinking about it, but it doesn't bother me. Like, ratings are down. So what? But we can talk about it.
Professional
Like,
basketball is not going away.
But just seeing how many people and how many places were showing the game, and I'm saying I probably saw 20 and walking around for 20 minutes. 20 minimum. Most of them had a bunch of people in there. And this was not even a New York City team playing. And just for people to be like, the reason the NBA ratings are down is because the Pelicans replaced the Jazz in New Orleans. I'm like, yeah, that's true. But also, like, who cares?
Drinking and gambling. It's about those two vices. The NFL gives us an excuse to participate in one or both of those things. What are you doing for the game? I got a bunch of parlays. Let's go to the bar, get a ton of mapo tofu, and drink 15 beers. Like, it's a celebration or delinquency, whatever you want to call it. But like, the NFL is intrinsically tied to gambling, fantasy, right? Famously. And now you can bet in real time on this stuff. And then you can bet your last dollar on getting those mapo tofu wings.
I would also say that the NFL and college football as well, having their sort of delineation on Saturdays and Sundays, and obviously it's migrated past that, and there's Monday Night Football, which has been going on for decades and decades, or Thursday Night Football, or how they keep intruding here and there, but creating Sunday for the boys, or whatever it is, a way that's like, okay, Friday night we know what's going on, Saturday night we know what's going on, but what if we just replace church, or it's an addition to church, we just add on Sunday? It's kind of like the forgotten day, like Sunday afternoon. Okay, church in the morning, work tomorrow, but what if you can get super drunk on Sunday afternoon?
Silken
Have you
tofu.
considered that?
Yeah.
You're a working man.
Yeah.
This is the Lord's Day.
I got a
you've some
cookies to
time
record
off.
tomorrow.
What about this?
Yeah.
What about you drink 45 beers with your friends and eat some wings and watch football? Like, that's a great idea. I'm in.
I hate to put the you
done
mentioned
that.
college football, and I think the wokeness of that sport is killing it. I hate to put the burden of proof on to you, but do you know who the national champion is? It happened this week. Do you know who played in the national championship game?
Well, actually, I do know this, which I normally would not, but it was Ohio State against somebody.
Dude, it was fucking Notre Dame. Like the dream.
Oh, yeah.
The-
I turned it on
Yeah.
for like 10 seconds just because I saw people talking about it. It's like, not for me, and turned it off.
If you were the NCAA college football god and you were like, if I could have any team, it would be Notre Dame versus a Big Ten school. Anybody. Notre Dame versus anybody. Yet it
Right,
kind
right.
of was
Notre Dame, Michigan,
anything.
Notre Dame, Wisconsin. Yeah.
Win one
Or
for the
you-
Gipper.
I would, if it was Notre Dame, Miami, I would have stuck around.
Oh, Miami is the most fun, obviously. Come on. But like, I guess my point is they went NDL, right? But
NIL.
NIL. My bad. I was trying to put that together. And there was a lot of controversy with that. A lot of old heads, a lot of Gipper originalists were like, this sacrifices the integrity of the sport. Like, we do this for education. We do this to shape young men and their lives and women in the whole program. We can't pay them because then they wouldn't be student athletes. And then it happens, and obviously the sport is as entertaining as ever, I guess. But then they switch to a playoff system. And I got to say, not a lot of heat around college football right now. It doesn't help that Alabama is not good, because I think that is like the Lakers or the Knicks or the Celtics. It's not football itself that is popular in America. It's the NFL specifically, isn't it?
I think that's true. And maybe it's only true here in the Northeast. I can't
No, it's
say that.
it's huge, except for the South. Maybe you're right. You're right.
Well, that's what I mean, right? If you go down to like Mississippi, where it's Auburn, it's Ole Miss, or Texas, like they definitely still care.
Oh, for sure, for sure. But you're looking for you want to capture the 50-50 audience. That's where the money is, right? You bake in your base.
But here's a question, and I don't have a good answer to this. Were people who loved the fact that college athletes were not getting paid, did they dislike NIL and the transfer portal and all that kind of stuff? These elements that have made the practice of college sports like more fair for the athletes, and sharing the wealth, the opportunity to bounce around and so forth. The wokeness of college football.
Yeah. Empowering.
Have those actually alienated the people from like Ole Miss, or are they still like, fuck it, we love it?
I don't know, because not as many people I like to follow are talking about it. But like, let's not forget who this helps. Young people of color, mostly black kids, right? Like, to be able to make money. Shedeur Sanders, already a Nepo baby, but like is wealthy because he has signed these deals. And I don't think people are like ugly racists, but I think people have biases, and they're like, this is unfair because of the things I believe. And I do think young people of color getting paid is annoying, but not like a deal breaker. But when you have a cloud of grievances and your team sucks, and Alabama and Auburn is not in the finals, that's like a big deal. There's a lot of debate as to why the NFL has been pushing Mahomes and Taylor Swift into the Super Bowl. It's really clear, right? It's like they don't want Buffalo in the Super Bowl. All due respect to Haley Steinfeld, who's a movie star-ish, they want Taylor Swift on TV.
That's probably true. So let's just stick more basketball here. The biggest news in hoops right now, because it's sort of a little bit of a dead spot here. We got the trade deadline coming up. Actually, really, really around the corner. It's about 10 days now. They keep moving it up. Remember, it was like right at All-Star, and now it's like end of the first week of February or something.
Trades. I love trades.
So hopefully we'll get some trades. And one of those may include your boy, Kyle Kuzma.
Yeah, I was hoping you would say that.
So your guy. So Kyle Kuzma has he's been griping a lot bit, and everyone makes fun of Kuz. So I'll read off what our guy Kuz said here. I've got a direct quote for you, and this is Kuz saying, I believe it was after a game a few days ago. I just think today I decided to be myself and not really try to fit into everything that we're doing here. Just being more assertive, demanding the ball, not just going out there and trying to let people develop, just playing my game. He was roundly mocked for these comments. Like, what did Kuz expect? You're playing for the Wizards. Are you Team Kuz on this? Or are you singing the Kuz blues?
Booze clues. So this is to contextualize it. Before the season, Kuz is going through a personal journey. He was like, I'm no longer doing fits anymore. I'm famous for the huge pink sweater. I'm famous for all these looks. I'm retiring from this. It's exhausting. I don't want to do it. And I was like, oh. And then he was like, before that, I think he was like, I'm going to fall in line. I am going to help this team with whatever it needs to do. I know we're rebuilding and I'm here. And then he finally gets fed up. Of course, I'm on his side. He is a genius at basketball. He's one of the best people in the world at doing this thing. And he's up for maybe one more contract before he probably is forced to retire due to age or, not get that big deal extension. So, like, yeah, man, like, does he care about, and I want to pronounce this right, I've been saying it wrong the whole time, Bilal Koulibaly, I believe is the right way to say it. Does he care about his teammates, like, developing into stars? Yeah, but he's got to take care of his own house, right?
I mean, I looked at what Kuz was saying, and despite the ridicule that Kuzma naturally engenders as a drip lord who...
He's got that Simmons about him. People hate him.
He's got that, but he also, unlike Simmons, he says a lot of dumb shit online. You know what I mean? Like, Simmons doesn't really have the same kind of presence. Kuzma will just be like, yeah, I kind of like Trump, and be like, oh, what's this guy doing? Like, Kuz is like kind of anti-vaxxer.
Yeah. Kyle Freedom is what they call him.
He is a social media magnet in both good ways and bad. He'll put on outfits, he'll say things, he just gets a lot of attention. Part of that was because he played in LA early in his career and was kind of a flashy young guy. He was a socialite. He was a party guy. If he had, come out of Michigan, and I forget where he played in college. Was he from Michigan State?
I forget.
I forget where he played. I don't even remember him in college, to be honest. Yeah. But if he'd gone and played for, I don't know, like the New Orleans Jazz or something, he wouldn't have the same prominence. But he played for the Lakers first, and that's what mattered. Anyway,
Utah he played for. Jesus.
That's what I'm saying. Like, who even knows? But if he'd gone and played for the Jazz, we never would have heard about him. But because he played for the Lakers, he got into the media. He was an LA guy. He's funny.
He was supposed to be a star too. He was slated to be the Tyler Hero star.
Yes. So we make fun of him for an array of reasons, which are justifiable. However, what he's saying is not unique. It's what veterans say all the time when they're part of rebuilding teams. And whether or not he could have expected this team to continue to be bad, I mean, they're as shitty as it gets. So the worst team in the NBA.
He's 29. Yeah. His is prime.
But also it's like losing isn't that fun. And maybe you're down for the project for a while. That doesn't mean you have to be down for the project indefinitely. Hey, I thought I was good with the rebuild. Like, hey, me and Jordan Poole, we're going to get some points. These young guys will get their opportunity to shine. We're going to grow together, and I'm going to be a big part of that. Like a year later, you're like, all right, so the plan was cool. I was down.
Yeah.
Like, hey, just because, we were dating at one point doesn't mean the relationship has to go forever.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I liked the plan before. I was in. I'm playing less minutes than ever. I'm taking less shots than ever. We're still really terrible. I think I'd like to move on. Yeah. Doesn't make him a bad guy or a fool or anything like that.
I mean, imagine a job where you're like, hey, we're not sure if we're going to add more minutes to your schedule, but we're going to pull you off the floor and have a younger, cheaper person take your place. And then we'll figure out what we want to do with you. You'd be like, oh, I'm fucked. I see the writing on the wall. I got to make sure I go do other interviews for other jobs. And that's essentially what Kuzma is saying, right? He's like, hey, I need to make myself appealing to another business, another team, because I want to play basketball.
I mean, he has a couple more years, but yeah, like why be here?
Well, if they're going to marginalize him and ruin his value.
No, I'm with you. I agree. Yeah. I'm saying
he's not a free agent this year. I don't think.
Right. Yeah. But I'm saying he played about 33, 34 minutes a game in his first couple seasons with the Wizards. Now he's playing about 28. He averaged 20 a game, and now he's averaging like 14. So from his perspective, he's like, look, I was down for this project. If I kind of get to score 20 a game and get to play a lot of minutes and be the face of the franchise, because no one else was offering me that. So that was the deal we made.
Mhm.
I get to score 20 a game and be the face of the franchise, and I'll be part of your dog shit organization.
Mhm.
And then I'm okay with losing for now.
Mhm.
But you sort of violated the role. The reason I'm here was that I'm supposed to score 20 a game and be the face of the franchise. If I'm playing 28 minutes and Bilal Koulibaly is getting 36 minutes, we have a problem.
Kispert's getting shots up now. Like, there's not much Mapo Tofu left after that.
This Sar guy is out here now. Look, I'm singing Koo's blues.
I mean, and
I'd rather be on a booze cruise.
the frustrating thing for him is that, like, he's not a special kind of player that could operate in the margins on a winning team. Like, winning teams have their Kuzma. They would more likely to add like a player like Koulibaly or Sar or Kispert, who have talents that kind of complement their Kuz like players.
Wait, Andrew, you're saying I can't interest you in Nektat Tobias Harris?
I can't interest you in Michael Beasley too. More Michael Beasleys. Shout out to him who declared that he's broke now. Shit.
Well, also, I will say this about Kuzma. Even though I just defended him, he is having by far the worst year of his career.
Asterisk,
he is
though,
awful. Right? He is awful.
Yeah.
He's been hurt.
Yeah.
He's not playing as many minutes, but he's shooting 42% from the floor.
But we know what he is.
He's shooting 28% from the line, or from three, and 58% from the line. Like, his true shooting percentage is like 48%. BPM, whatever you think about it, it's like -5.5. I mean, he's a bottom 10 player in the entire NBA this year out of guys who play real minutes. We know who he is. He's not that bad.
Of course.
He's okay.
You trade for his career stats.
Totally. I just mean when he's like, yeah, I've been really fucking awful this year. Why won't they give me more minutes? Like, well, you could also play a little better.
Or he's like, I can't get into a rhythm. I'm not being utilized correctly. I need to get out of here.
I'm sure that's how he would present it. I mostly mean that I think his struggles are not only tying into perhaps his minutes in Washington, but also how he feels.
Yep.
I know me, like, if I'm out there playing the pickup run and I'm bricking, like I'm 1 of 12 from 3, I start getting a little testy.
Yeah.
I'll start, hey, dude, you got to pass that ball. Come on. You're just in a bad mood.
Yeah.
And you know that it's because you're not shooting that well, but it's more that you're just not enjoying it out there as much. Yeah. So I get him being like, yo, I'm shooting like shit. Our team is losing. Yeah, I'm not a happy camper.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think what we're getting at is like the villainy of players like him or Tyreek Hill in the NFL who think like this, being like, trade me to somewhere where I'm useful. I want to play. I want to make money. I don't want to die on the vine here.
It's like the problem is you're just not that useful, sir.
I know. See, that's the undercurrent. Whereas like some players might be, right? Like player empowerment, sadly, depends on how good you are, not the culture.
This is James Harden, right? Where it's like James Harden's like, I demand a trade. You're like, well, yeah, because you're really good.
Someone will take you.
And other teams would like you.
Yeah. Yeah, and like when Dwight Howard's like, I want to empower myself. Hey, I'm willing to work again. Everyone's like, we're good, Hall of Famer. A star in China.
Isaiah Thomas is back.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, same one? That guy who's come back 4 times already? Like, respect to that short king.
As you hear the Brinks truck on my end.
I mean, and I wish he'd been able to take some of that Celtic, that gold bullion from the pot of gold, but yeah, this is like his 3rd comeback.
I mean, yeah, it's a gamble, right? Because some players get such a long leash. We talked about Jeff Green earlier. The only pod to mention Jeff Green twice, probably in this year. But like,
Well, it's because he's dating Nicole Kidman now, right?
that's right. Kid Green, Greenman. But
Nicole Kidman of the
we'll get to our HBO segment next episode. But I think like there's players who inexplicably always stick with teams, right? Like we always think about Taj Gibson, Derrick Rose, always with a team. Not very good, but like always found a team that gave him like $4 or $5 million. Obviously, he was a former MVP and Kuzma wasn't. But like that's a gamble you play. And that's when he's trying to cash in his chips. He's like, I tried the good soldier thing. I would love to have a decent role for another 5 years on maybe 5 different teams. But that's not quite happening as far as I see it. So now I'm going to try to force my way out. And like as the trade deadline approaches, there are needs of teams, whether they're tanking or trying to win, and there are needs of players. And like we rarely talk about the needs of players because that's not fun. It has to do with getting older and also these aprons that CJ McCollum may or may not have been responsible for. But like you're hearing all this stuff like the Pacers are going to deal Miles Turner because they can't afford the taxes moving forward on his $30 million contract. I'm like, this sucks because the trade deadline is now half money talk, half apron talk, and half fit talk.
Yeah, they've destroyed the NBA. What do you call it? The hot stove, whatever.
Yeah.
They used to call. I guess that's a baseball term, right? The hot stove league.
Mike Lupica over here.
I think so.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's
yeah, for sure.
But yeah, it's not fun to speculate about trades unless you're someone who just is like an apron nerd. You're like, oh no, I really want to talk about trade kickers and aprons and like taxpayer, whatever it is when you do it, repeater charges and all that shit. I'm like, I don't actually care because those things are.
But you got to, right? Like
are
the Knicks should trade for Boucher.
What I'm saying is
not.
What I'm saying is the NBA devised these things, so I can't take them seriously. It's not like these are just the rules of gravity. They're like, no, we put these onerous things in place to make it harder to do trades. Therefore, you, Ben, and you, Andrew, now need to learn about them to discuss them on their pod. Well, I say no dice.
No,
I'm not going to learn about aprons and repeater fines. I'm not going to learn about that stuff just because you invented them because Dan Gilbert or someone else doesn't want to pay someone a certain amount of money going down the line. Get out of here. I'm not going to pay attention, and I'm going to come up with trades that are impossible.
I know, right? Like, it would be logical to hear that, oh, did you hear Miles Turner, a perennial blocks leader, is available? And Lakers fans being like, Anthony Davis has been asking for a center. Like, can we get him yellow uniforms? Let's go. It's like, well, what does the apron look like? And I probably, if we Google it, it's like, it's probably impossible. That sucks. Like, I don't think the NBA took into account that the trade deadline is the joy people feel of following the league. Player movement is the joy people feel in following the league. And when we restrict people, teams, from making moves, like the Knicks can't really add anybody. That's less fun. I would argue that a large number of fans just care about player movement more than actually watching the games, bro.
Well, from what we've seen over last summer, they've made it harder for teams to make transactions, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's what you're saying. It's like, well,
can't take on more money than going out. Right.
Exactly. We want to make this deal and then this and like it's just complicated and harder to make trades. Mm-hmm. And the NBA would probably say, well, this was our way of curbing player mobility. Players had too much freedom. They were bouncing around willy-nilly. So we made it just tricky. The architecture is different. If we can make it so that less teams are in the market for these players, then they're most likely to stay. they're most likely to take the contract that they're given. Like Paul George is a good example. How many suitors did he really have?
Right.
Like you could go to Philly or you could go to Orlando. The reality is if the Clippers wanted him back, he'd be in LA.
Yeah. Yep. Totally.
They didn't. They more or less cut him loose, and he had two options. And this is Paul George. Like maybe a team could have done a sign and trade, but the Clippers weren't into that really either. But again, he had two options. That's Paul George, Hall of Famer, coming off an all-star season, the most valuable, easy plug-and-play type of position in the league, a 3-and-D guard who can really shoot, point of attack defender, whatever.
Sure.
He's old.
Sure.
But two suitors in the entire league basically even had the ability, other than rebuilding teams, to go get Paul George. And that's what the NBA wants. They want it so that if a team feels like cutting someone loose, great. But if players want to play the field, well, your options are minimized. So I think that's the underlying emphasis here. But what you're talking about with Miles Turner and what happened with Karl Anthony Towns is why it's also shitty. Because if teams say, well, we don't feel like paying it, even if they're a small market, they'll just blow up a contender.
I know. The Pacers are kind of good. I think they would beat the Knicks.
Minnesota was totally a contender.
Yeah. But
absolutely a contender.
It's like, well, we want Naz Reid and Nikhil Alexander Walker. It's like, well, then you can't have your best player. Like, what? We can't.
No, they were a contender. They blew it up. They're no longer a contender.
Yeah, it sucks, right? And then Anthony Edwards.
If Miles Turner gets traded, that team is probably not a contender.
Which sucks.
I mean, I don't think the Pacers are now, but I'm just saying.
But they could probably get to the conference finals again, right? Like,
yeah, they did it. They did it last year.
Yeah, I like that team build, but it's frustrating because we've become accountants, and we've mentioned this before. We wrote about it in the Joy of Basketball, but like, it is as this trade deadline is approaching, the aprons are new. Aprons are a new idea, and they're so punitive that I'm kind of mad at these owners pretending like, oh, we can't pay that tax. I'm like, just pay it. You know, it's just like, oh, we're actually like losing money on this. I'm like, no, you're not.
I cannot stand the Coos Blues when it's coming from ownership. Just sell the team, man.
Yeah, if you don't want to do
sell
this,
the team.
yeah, and make a few billion off of it. And I understand a team not wanting to pay Miles Turner because maybe you're like, he's too injured. He plays with Legos. He dresses up like Chewbacca. I don't want him. I'm like, fair enough. But if you tell us it's because of the tax, I'm like, pay the tax. Just pay it.
Yeah, I agree. I can't deal with ownership who is, you know, they are getting equity in these franchises, and players don't. You know, players get zero equity, and you know the equity isn't even taxed. It's like, okay, so you're a billionaire or part of a billionaire conglomerate. You bought this team for $300 million, and now it's worth $3.5 billion. You can take out loans on that team and on what you own. You can get, you know, you don't pay tax on. You can take out loans. You can do all this stuff. You're worth $3.3 billion because that's what the franchise is worth. Players get none of that shit. And then they sit here and be like, whoa, couldn't afford, you know, to keep Karl Anthony Towns here. I'm like, yes, you could have. You just didn't feel like it.
And I know rich people didn't get rich by being generous or, in my opinion, ethical. And that's not how billionaires get rich and buy teams. But like when I believe the All-Star game is in Golden State or in the Chase Center this year.
It's Golden State this year, yeah.
And it's beautiful. Everyone's just like, yo, this is a wonderful, wonderful building and a place to play. I'm like, does Steph Curry have part ownership in this? Because he built this building. Like Steph Curry should own like a part of the Warriors franchise and this building. And that's where the value is. But, you know, he gets his contract, he fulfills his duties, and then he may have a front office job. But like, if it was fair, he would get equity, right?
Well, I mean, you know, that's kind of like LeBron as well.
Mm-hmm. He should have.
It's like, what did LeBron add to Dan Gilbert's investment in Cleveland. It's just astronomical. I mean, or what LeBron has even done with the Lakers. I just mean
my gosh,
adding to
yes.
that lore.
Do not trade him
or
away.
Kobe
Yeah.
or all these things.
Yeah.
It's like, and then, LeBron kind of falls in that Jay-Z category where he's like, I want to become an owner now.
Yeah, exactly.
So you want to give ownership to all the players? It's like, I didn't say that.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what I was getting at. I want to become an owner so I can
Do this.
do what the owners are doing to other people. I want to have an agency that does these things. And like, I will, change the dynamics a bit in that I am a former player and I'm LeBron James. And my story. I'm a kid from Akron. It's different.
Yeah.
It's like, but I would like to continue the system as it exists.
I just
I would
want to
just
get
like
paid.
to slightly diversify it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of with that too. I always tell the story like,
I'm not saying he's got to be the Che Guevara here.
Yeah.
I just mean we are familiar with this game plan of the Jay-Z being like, hey, I think it'd be really cool if you pay me a lot of money and I'll tell you that you should book Kendrick Lamar.
yeah.
Does that does that work for everybody? Is that cool? Great.
Yeah.
Good deal.
And like we see, I mean, LeBron James off the court is kind of like a teacher's pet. He's not as likable as he is on the court, in my opinion. But he's done great things. I don't know his school.
I mean, the I Promise School is really good.
Is it
I'm
still
saying he
good?
gives back.
Yeah, people
I
were
mean,
claiming it might have
that-
been a front or
I don't
something.
know.
Yeah, who knows? Haters, whatever. But like,
I'm just saying he seems to be a good guy and he's never done anything wrong. I'm only talking about like not fully revolutionary when you say I want to become an NBA owner. It's like, yeah, we all do, man.
but like, and then like Kevin Durant will give a bunch of money to disaster relief in Oklahoma City, but he's still a hated dude because he wants to play somewhere else. And like, it goes back to our way the beginning of this perfect pod, the conversation about like the NBA benefits from us arguing about like, is wanting to have a better work environment ethical? And I'm like, well, what about your lease agreements? Like, do we want to talk about that? What about penalties for paying players? Is that ethical? What about a lottery and a draft where you have to work where the company sends you? Like, how ethical is that? Various degrees. You can argue about those forever. But like, as the trade deadline approaches, I feel like this is becoming more and more of like a undercurrent or a subhead of who goes where. It's just like, why are there fewer choices for these players and these teams?
I would say that's how it was designed.
Right.
By the hand of C.J. McCollum, master negotiator.
Oh, I hate him. If he had something to do with it, he's the worst. If he actually negotiated,
Free C.J. McCollum if he's innocent of any major crimes.
yeah. I don't know what happened in that room. He might have been like, "We don't want this, but okay, I'm gonna have to put on a great face." But anyway, let's talk about proposals. I know it's your least favorite thing, but like, I love a good trade hypothetical.
All right, so what's your favorite proposal that's fluttering around right now? What's that one that really you can sink your teeth into?
Chris Middleton setting up a middleman shop next to Big Face Coffee in Miami after he's traded to the Heat. So he would serve as a middleman to get Big Face Coffee. So I know cups are like $20. That's Jimmy Butler's whole thing. But the middleman's here. So he was like, listen, it's going to cost you $25. And I, as a very large man, I'm going to impede your access to the $20 coffee unless you pay the toll. I'm looking forward to the middleman entering the equation in Miami. That's funny.
I mean, if you could get Hero, Middleton, and Bam together, that could be special. That could be the new Paul George, Drummond, and Reggie Jackson.
I mean, Middleton has a few years left, I believe. He's cooked, I think. I'm a huge Middleton fan, but there's a reason why a contending team is willing to deal him. And it goes back to Heat culture, whether we want to like revel in its demise or talk about its potential. And they Kalel Ware seems like a real ass player, doesn't he? Like he looks like he is going to play a long time in the NBA. He's like Mitchell Robinson with speed and hops.
Hassan Whiteside with a 3-ball.
Which is incredible. Well, Hassan kind of had a 3-ball, but like, okay, if Kalel Ware is another example of Heat culture at its best, like you pluck this guy from the draft that is like valuable, that could be a 14, 7, and 4 player, like incredible. But then I look at Bam Adebayo, I'm like, what's wrong with Bam? He was kind of a blue chip prospect that like has had flashes where he's good, great, having a rough season, man. Where's this culture? Like, take care of Bam Adebayo.
Yeah, for just for some bookkeeping here, Kalel Ware, whose name sounds very much like he was born on Krypton as a member of Superman's family. He's averaging per 36 minutes, I think, which makes sense for him because he's only recently started getting serious tick. 18.6 points per 36 minutes, 10.5 boards, 2.3 blocks, 1.2 steals, 62% true shooting percentage, and, as you alluded to before, 38% from the floor. That's a solid stat line for a rookie that they got in like the mid-teens, I believe.
Yeah. Yo, he's good, right? And like when they took him, it was like, ooh, they've done it again. They got Jovic and they got him. I don't, like as soon as Kalel Ware started seeing minutes, nerds were like, he is good money for gambling because he's not going to cost a lot and he's going to produce like a player that does cost a lot. And it was known. And that's awesome. Is he a player that you can build around? Probably not. We thought Bam was. So like I'm a Knicks fan. I like to see the playful gamesmanship be demise of Pat Riley and the Heat. I don't have that much love for them, even though these players are awesome and I love Jimmy Butler. So like they embrace the idea of Heat culture willingly. Made jerseys, put words on the court, all that stuff. It's just about having good players, right? And if Jimmy Butler goes to, as he's rumored to, Phoenix, like I don't want to talk about injury. Let's just say he goes as is and plays games. There goes the culture. He is the culture.
Yeah, and again, it's like, as you said, the idea that someone like Kalel Ware is a product of culture. Well, no, that would be a product of good drafting.
Yeah, that's a
right.
good draft.
I just mean they can be like, well, Kalel Ware, 3 months ago was bullshit.
Yeah, Kalel Ware was like,
Bum.
what the fuck? You drafted me because I'm good.
He's an absolute loser that we drafted out of sympathy, and then we molded him and honed him into the polished steel center shooting threes that you now see before you. He's like I've been playing on the team since mid-October. We're like 3 months in, and you're like, nah, dude, you're a chump.
Yeah,
we've given you the blessing. And it's like bestowing you with magic powers. You now have Heat culture. And he's like, wow, this is crazy. I can ball now.
I mean, but there is some truth to that because you put some players next to Chris Paul, like through a draft or through a trade or through happenstance, and they have the best the years of their career, and then they sign huge contracts. And it's just like, oh, our culture did make you into a star.
Yeah, I remember looking at the all-time leaders in field goal percentage one time. And again, this may have changed. Like, this was a few years back. But it was like Tyson Chandler in New Orleans, DeAndre Jordan in Los Angeles, and like a season of Nerlens Noel
Yeah.
in OKC. And they were just like all up there, all timers. Like, oh, that's just Chris Paul.
Yeah. Although I have to defend Tyson Chandler, becomes a defensive player of the year, not with Chris Paul.
Oh, all very good players.
Yeah.
But it was just like specifically all-time field goal, like per season records were
Insane.
just dominated by Chris Paul's teammates.
And your boy, Victor Wembanyama, blew up. He becomes the actualized version of himself this year, maybe with or without Chris Paul, but Chris Paul's is right there, right?
Yeah, I mean he's actually used less of a lob threat than I predicted.
Yeah.
But what they've really done with Wemby, not to embark on a Wemby conversation, is just be like, hey, you can't play one-on-one basketball. You're really bad at it. How about you just chuck threes instead?
Yeah.
And he's like, fine. And they're like, cool, you're efficient now. That was all it took.
Yeah.
You're just not allowed to go one-on-one anymore.
Yeah.
Unless it's a mismatch and you're sort of close to the basket. Because otherwise you're terrible.
Which I think capped Porzingis' career kind of bit. He liked to dance a little bit too much, and they let him. The Knicks let him. It's like, don't do it. Catch and shoot. Don't think. Just launch.
No, Wemby's one of the worst ISO scorers in the league.
Yeah, but
that doesn't mean he's not amazing. He's like a top 5 player. He's just not good at that specific thing, which is giving the ball on the elbow with someone on him. He's not good yet. He will be, though.
How bad could Chris Paul, old ass Chris Paul, be to still be worthwhile? To still have a plus benefit to your team? How bad can he be? Do you know what I mean? Like, is there a certain point where it's like he's too old and decrepit, like he's no longer helping? But he can get older and more decrepit at this point and still help, right?
Well, it's one of those things where he doesn't play with like the speed and athleticism and quickness that he once had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's old as 30.
But he's also made it clear that he doesn't need those things anymore.
Yeah.
He's not trying to beat anybody down court. He just spaces the floor, gets the ball into Wemby's hands or whoever, runs a pick and roll, kicks the ball out,
talks to his team,
sticks open jumpers.
He's a coach.
It really just comes down to when can he no longer defend?
Yeah, and he's been a solid defender as a short king for sure. But
I mean, I think you could argue
you can still hide him. You can still hide him.
He might be the best sub 6 foot defender ever out of like guys who weren't. Oh, here's a specialist who's in the league for like 1 year. Like in terms of like, if you're going to say, all right, 6 foot guys like Iverson, Stockton, Isaiah Thomas, that list of small kings, I would say he's actually definitely the best defender.
Yeah, he's awesome. And he's smart. He stands in the right place. Obviously, him being short, sort of like Deuce McBride, like will hurt his effectiveness. But I think but
that's also always been the case, right? So I just mean it's more like, when can he just not stay in front of people at all?
I think that coupled with if his shot falls off enough where you don't have to guard him, I think that those two things will be his exit.
So like 50 years old is what we're saying.
This is my question, right? Like if he's still draining shots and you can't leave him, until that happens, I don't know if that's next year or 5 years from now, he's still valuable.
And also, no one's asking Chris Paul to play 40 minutes a game.
Exactly.
It's like, hey, we're going to need you out there for like 18, 22 minutes. Can you do that? Lots of breaks in between. I mean, look, without getting into his injury history, that's probably what it is.
Yeah.
You know, something gets hurt and that slows him more, or it's just not worth coming back to the level that he's at now. But knock on wood, because obviously Chris Paul's had his career rearranged in certain ways because of like knee, ankle injuries and whatever. So I don't think you would have guessed when we saw Chris Paul ruin his knees early in his career. You know, this was a guy who used to be able to dunk on KG, was arguably the best player in the league and should have won MVP. I don't think we
Should've
would have
been a
known
weaker.
that he would have this kind of
Yeah.
longevity.
I didn't either.
When he
Yeah.
came back and changed his game on a rebuilt knee. The fact that he's still this good and we're talking about him playing at like 75 years old.
And I hate to be the splinter Mr. Miyagi guy, but like,
No, you don't. You love being that guy.
well, I'm saying there's detriment to being a short king, but there's also some benefits because it's like kind of a lower physical impact physics thing. He's not jumping as high. His limbs aren't as long. His tendons aren't as long. Like it bodes well for him. I know he's had an injury riddled career a bit, but this bodes well for him if he takes care of himself.
That's totally true.
Mm.
It's really like, can he stay in front of people?
Yeah.
Because no one's asking him to block shots. No one's asking him to get rebounds.
Yeah.
No one's asking him to score in the paint over anyone. It's like, yeah, you can kind of just do this. Walk the ball at the court, yell at people, pass the ball, take an open three when it's there, get back on defense.
Yeah.
You don't have to be like Khalil Ware out there.
There was a while where I thought LeBron James should just join a different team and win a championship with them, a different team every year, depending on who needed it. I'm like, every time there's like a big that comes out of college or the draft, they should just sign Chris Paul for a year. It's like, this is Wemby number 2. We'll have Chris Paul on the Wizards for a year, or the Magic. They're kind of too good. But a tanking team would just be like, we need kind of Chris Paul to like rein in the Khalil Wares of the world.
Let's talk a little bit about the results of the NBA All-Star voting.
Oh, just 2 Knicks representing the East. Goddamn. Shout out to David Lee. All-Star.
So for those unacquainted with the architecture of the voting, very quickly, it's 3-pronged. 3 prongs. Count them: 1, 2, 3 prongs. 1, fan voting. 2, player voting. 3, Boston media voters. Celtics fans get their say. But there's 3 prongs. It's all tabulated and weighted, however the hell they do it.
James.
Look, it's not the right time for this.
All right, I'll focus.
But so this is how they're arranged. And the guy that I want to talk about here is LaMelo Ball.
Sick.
Because he led all Eastern Conference guards in voting. Far more than the 2 starters, Mitchell Robinson and Jalen Brunson.
He dominated that prong.
Way almost double the amount of time.
That prong
the
was
votes
his
of,
prong.
Of Brunson.
Prong
That was
game.
his prong.
Prong.
He was
Yeah.
the LeProng James
Yeah.
of the fan voting prong.
Yeah.
Now the
Let me see
the
that
player
prong.
prong,
Prong.
the player prong. No more prongs.
Okay.
So the second of the prongs, which would be the player prong, he was 3rd. And I believe he was behind, he may have been behind Mitchell, Donovan Mitchell and Brunson there. I think so. But the biggest prong that proved a problem.
Oh my god.
Proved a problem.
Alliteration. Assassin.
I hate alliteration.
I know.
I hate alliteration.
You apparently not. Apparently you
the third of the prongs, the media prong, they put him 7th. And that was the biggest jump between any player and any of the prongs, between where they were positioned with the players or the media. I'm sorry, with the players or the fans and the media. Like, you saw ones where like the media dropped someone by like 1 or 2 spots, and that was just sort of throughout. But they absolutely sandbagged LaMelo, who was set up to be a starter for the East, and maybe won't even make the All-Star team at all. I mean, I think he
will.
I think they will put him on it. But they voted him 7th behind Garland, behind Lillard, all these guys.
I mean, it
Disgrace, if you ask me.
is a resume award, right? And I love LaMelo. I think he should be starting over Brunson too. But he did miss a lot of time. And I don't believe team record should be a huge factor. But it's worth noting that the Knicks, led by Brunson, are as good as we hoped. And the Charlotte Hornets, led by LaMelo when he was healthy, not good. So there's that detail of it which I don't love. Uh, Again, I think he should be starting over Brunson, but Brunson is an immensely. I know we're going to argue about this, but he is popular. LaMelo is also popular, but Brunson is popular, and he may have known these writers since he was a child. And a lot of these clubs, whether it be the Hall of Fame or joining a team or making an all star, is about nepotism and branding this club. And these writers may or not be willing to give LaMelo Ball an all star starting nod just yet.
Well, yes, that's clearly true. I also wonder if the way that these prongs, if you will, are designed is that the fans is just the popularity contest. Who do the people want to see, right? And at times that's been a perverted prong because of like Andrew Wiggins or Yao Ming or whoever. Just overwhelmingly fan. Now, you can say that that's like a problem. That's what it's there for. Popularity contest. The players is, I guess, just to have them allowed to have a say in this thing, to talk about their peers. They don't seem to take it particularly seriously. When you see like super goofy, but no, that's what I mean. The players always goof around, and they'll be like,
Josh Hart.
7 votes for Landry Shamet. Like they just fuck around constantly and put their teammates in or friends, whatever. I'm not saying their votes were that different from anybody at the top, but they kind of don't give a shit.
No,
like, sure,
and
whatever.
There's also deeply unpopular NBA superstars. So like that affects players like Kevin Durant.
I don't think he's unpopular.
I don't know. Yeah, of the starting 10, these guys seem pretty well liked to the point of the concept, but not Durant. I'm just trying to slander Durant, who I think is a top 2 all-time player.
I can't remember where they had Durant in the West, like with the players specifically. I know that him and LeBron are both starting, and I think that actually was a product of the fan and player votes, and both of them got dropped down by the media, I believe. So the media's job here is to be like the sober voice of reality, the experts. But as our buddy Dan, who works for Yahoo, was saying, well, there isn't any criteria, and part of the motivation for not having criteria is they want people to argue about it.
I love it.
So it's like when someone says, well, LaMelo just didn't play as many games as Brunson, and I would say, who gives a shit? It's an exhibition game. Like vote for all NBA. Use criteria about games played and like BPM and your team record when it comes down to like all NBA. That's serious. For me, it's like, yeah, who's balling out? LaMelo's balling out. He's fun to watch. He's balling.
Glazing for balls.
I'm glazing the balls, Paul.
I mean, also, it's hard to figure if all prongs are created equal, because the voting is weird. You know, like it's worth double some days. There's bonus days. There's unlimited voting sometimes. There are automated ways to do it. And like, I believe China voted some player in that was, I forget, a few years ago. That was a surprise. But it's hard to gauge popularity. I don't believe in jersey sales, but the top 10 jerseys don't involve LaMelo Ball. And like, you know, when Jason Tatum doesn't play minutes on Team USA, I'm like, yeah, beyond the performance in the present, you take the resume of Kevin Durant, and he's playing in an elimination game representing this great country. But like, in a way, these starters, these 10 guys, feel like legacy dudes, especially since Brunson wasn't a starter last year and people thought he should have been.
Yeah, I just thought Brunson over LaMelo would make sense for all NBA, but it just comes down to the criteria you're using, right? If you're sitting there and looking at All-Star and saying, yeah, it's like all NBA, and I use the exact same criteria, but it's a mid-season award, I would say, well, then you don't look at it the same way I do.
Sure.
because I think this is an exhibition game and it's for like who's balling, who's fun to watch.
Yeah, but they're getting
because
paid
like,
for this in contract incentives. It's so fucked. You want
I
it.
get it, but they're all getting paid for it, so whatever.
No, I mean like there's bonuses in contracts. Like if you make 3 all-star
right.
teams,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, so it means a lot. Not for just for the player, but like the way these contracts are structured and way players choose teams to go with. Like, I don't know, all this stuff matters. But yeah, I mean, I would like to see LaMelo as the starter. He's the hero of our book.
I mean, one thing I cannot stand
Oh my gosh.
is like when they did that bullshit with the Hawks. Like, you're all making the All-Star team. Your team is doing so well. I'm like, this is horseshit. Stop it.
Yeah.
What are we doing? We're going to put Kyle Korver and Jeff T. You all make the All-Star team because like your team is doing so well. I'm like, the reward for your team doing well
Is a
is
championship.
enjoying wins. You get to win basketball games and then you get to go into the playoffs and potentially win a title. That is the reward for team success.
That first happened to the Pistons, right? Was it Tayshaun Prince who missed out? 4 guys went.
Yeah, I think so.
Rip Hamilton went, right? The other 3, obviously.
Yep. Yeah, I'm pretty sure, it was Tayshaun who was snubbed.
Oh, who's a better player than Rip Hamilton? But anyway, that's a taste thing.
Facts.
Yeah.
Facts, but it's facts.
You know what else is facts?
Perfect pods, perhaps?
Perfect prompt. I mean, pod.
Cookies.
I love cookies.
Fuck, I was doing a good...
I love cookies. I love cookies.